Is okay. I'm excited. It's been a long time coming. The Yes or No 2.0, and it has expanded a bit because I added a few IQ points in the meantime from the first Yes or No video to this one. Okay, so how to get decisions on every single call without sounding salesy, the close and paid Yes or No 2.0. So, of course, you have to start with a big claim. And unfortunately, that claim is not always true because you're not going to get a decision on every call. However, the mindset here, guys, is you as closers should be doing everything in your power to stack the cards in your favor. And one of those elements of stacking the cards in your favor is simply letting the prospect know we're looking for a decision. Okay, that sounds like common sense. But not everyone does it, right? And it's so easily done, and it's so easily added to your calls in some way, you know. And I'm going to go through a lot of those different ways today and how you would apply them, etc. Right? But I just want to give a bit of an analogy here because I think of this skill of saying yes or no as a skill in a closing call. It's a skill, okay? So it's something you can hone. It's something you can get better at, right? Something that can be done really well or really badly, right? So it's not, you can't say it's not black and white. You can't say it's good, you can't say it's bad. It comes down to delivery, pace, tonality, so many things. It's like the 3-point in basketball, right? You might have been, God knows, I never played basketball, but I'm sure in high school you're on this team. You've got little fucking John who keeps shooting 3-pointers and missing. So it's massively risky every time he does it, right? And you're like, John, stop fucking doing the 3-pointer, bro. You're shit. You're a retard, okay? But then you see Steph Curry and you're like, okay, well, there's levels to this. If he keeps to fucking doing it, it's like a superpower, right? So it's not just black or white. It comes down to delivery and it's a skill. Same in football. When I say football, I mean actual soccer. There's skills associated with that, you know, if there was a guy in your team doing it all the time and he's really shit, you'd be like, bro, like, there's just no point. Like, it's massive risk and you make us lose because of it. Whereas you then see Neymar doing it and you're like, it's great. Okay, so it's literally the same thing. It's a skill, right? But the problem here, and this is where it originates, is a lot of people say, and this is common because I work with a lot of people one-to-one, and one of the problems they face is which I just can't get a decision on calls. Lots of people just want to go away and they want to go and think about it. I'm like, no. Of course, like that's number one in sales is people want to go away and think. But I ask them these things like, do they know you want a decision? Usually the case is no. They don't even, we have not told them anything to do with this. So it's like, so you're leaving it in the prospect's hands to decide what they want. Okay? Do they even know it's a sales call? Usually. Well, a lot of the time, no. Okay, what I mean by that, guys, is, and I don't know why people are still doing this. Sales calls are labeled as a free strategy session, a free consult. Sometimes it's even worded as like, hey, no pressure, get on these calls and we'll consult you and we won't even sell you. And then you're trying to sell them, right? Or idiotic stuff, right? So those two, do they want a decision and do they know it's a sales call? Right? These are basics, right? We need to put this in place. But is it reasonable to make a decision on the call? How educated are they? These two go together, okay? And I can't give you all examples of every single scenario, but you need to think of it like this. Some offers are incredibly simple, right? There's no brain power required on the prospect's half, right? It's simply pay, receive, done in some ways. Some offers are pay, but when they do pay, there's going to be an incredibly, a lot of work on their part. Okay, a lot of brain power, might be new skills, etc., etc. Lots of things to think about. So then their education on the offer prior to coming to the closing call is very important. Because you can't have the latter where there's a high education needed to make an informed decision. And you can't expect them to make a yes or no decision unless you have organized and sorted out the pre-education before the closing call. What I mean by that is VSLs, PDFs, setter calls, so that when they come to the closing call, it is pretty much a decision call because they're highly educated. Okay, hope that makes sense. However, it's a very easy offer. They don't need much education, and they can just watch an ad, click to get a call, and then it is reasonable to make a decision on that call. You're fucking stupid if you don't tell them you're looking for yes or no. A lot of you are on B2C BizOps and are already doing one call closes. That's kind of what you're all going for. So it literally makes no sense to not say it. Do you understand? If you are going for one call closes on your offer, you are retarded if you do not do this. Okay? Let's strip it back and let's talk about the mindset here. So the conveyor belt aspects of things. Aspects maybe not the right word, but this is how I think about things, okay? So don't read underneath it, guys. Just listen to me here. So if I just said to you, right, John, sit there, I'm going to get a conveyor belt. Conveyor belt's here and it's coming and there's 1,000 prospects on it. Sales calls, one after the other. Bang, 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 right? Got no choice. Okay, you can have 8 hours sleep, but you wake up, bang, 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 prospects after prospects, okay? A lot of you, with the way you do things, you don't have systems let's just say systems in place in your calls and regimented aspects of your calls so that every call you do at the minute is scattered. If you have 1,000 people coming to you, bang, 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 being scattered is not a good way of doing things. You need to have a system in place so you can effectively tackle all of these people in the same way, right? And so at the same time, if you have this conveyor belt of so many people, you also aren't going to have the time to remember all the people who you need to follow up with and you need to go and ask and second calls and blah, blah, blah. And so utilizing the yes or no is just one of these foundational elements to be like, okay, John, on this call for today, I'm looking for yes or no. Okay, so in a sense, if you say no, that's fine. If you say no, it doesn't mean you can't do it another time. It just means on this call today, I'm looking for yes or no, right? And you're saying it. You don't have to give a reason. But the reasoning is underneath, is I've got a fat fucking pipe, like, whatever, I forgot the word. But anyway, you've got so many people coming to you, it just makes so much sense to you to let the people know. It makes no sense for me to waste time following up with people. Like, it's first come, first serve here, right? So yes or no today. So that's kind of the mindset. And you can have these reasonings, right? So you can have the reasoning that you don't have to tell them, but you can tell them at some point in the call, right? So you might say, your reasoning might be, I'm booked out weeks in advance, so it's the best use of my time. But your reasoning could also be, we only work with a certain amount of people, so it's first come, first serve. You might be, your reasoning might be, we're close to capacity. Whether all of these things are true or false, guys, I'm not going to tell you whether you should do it or not. I'm just saying, you have that mindset and that reasoning. It makes so much sense to be able to say it to these people, right? Now, if we look at utilizing this and on what people warm, cold, everything in between, I used to really think it would be only something you can say to warm prospects, because it's kind of like overpowering and maybe salesy on cold prospects. But if someone's warm and they know you and they've had a set call, it's the second call with the company, they've already had a 45-minute call, fuck yeah, it makes decision. It makes so much sense. Like, this is a call to make a decision. But you look at the flip side, it's like, well, they're on a second call with a company, with your company. Pretty sure that's high intent. So they're probably already likely to be thinking about some kind of a decision, right? So you've got two aspects there. So essentially what I'm saying though is, to those prospects, telling them we're looking for a yes or no is common sense, okay? And it's just re-emphasizing what they're already thinking. I used to think it wouldn't be the right thing to do on cold prospects, right? Now, I categorically disagree with that now, right? Especially in the conveyor belt mindset, right? And if you have organized and sorted out your pre-call education, then it is actually a superpower not knowing these prospects very well, not having too much of a boat to rock, and just saying to them and being upfront with them and being kind of jaded and being like, John, let's get into things. I'm going to ask you some questions to figure out if this is kind of a good fit. I've got some prerequisites to go through with you. If it all makes sense, I'll show you what I think would work best on my screen. And by the end of the call, I'm just looking for a simple yes or a no. Is that fine, John? Right? And being kind of jaded and not connected with that person is actually a good thing, because it's kind of immediately putting you in an authoritative position. It's kind of saying, we're premium, we're exclusive, you have to qualify to us. Okay, and that's, it's not just the yes or no, it's the rest of the call also. But utilize it on cold prospects absolutely works in a lot of scenarios. There are a handful of reasons why I actually think the yes or no is not always needed. Okay. Now, just because I am a huge proponent of utilizing the yes or no, right, doesn't mean I'm so blind to the fact you can have a successful sales call without it, right? That's one thing to understand. But at the same time, I also know when it's not needed, okay? When it's not essential. You can still do it, I'm just saying it's not essential. And so, for instance, there's a few scenarios. So let's say someone has been referred to the organization. It's a friend of the CEO's or something. There's a really close connection. They come in, they've been referred. Not always needing that scenario, right? You can do it, but I would soften it in those cases, right? And not be so kind of sat back and not connected, right? There are other scenarios where the person coming into the call is very much connected to, let's not say connected, but more so they've followed the CEO for a while. They've been talking to the CEO via DMs. It's not actually the CEO, it's like a setter, obviously. And so they're very much, they've had a certain mindset from speaking to the CEO, and then they get onto the call. You need to carry on that type of mindset that they've had from the DMs, if that makes sense. Right? So that messaging and everything they feel has to, work together. It can't be messaging from the CEO, very warm, very inviting. Yeah, we'll help you. Just let us know what you need. Get on the call. Like my right-hand guy will help you out. Yeah, we'll consult with you, and then get on. And then you're like, yeah, I'm just looking for yes or no here, right? So this is why I also believe the whole messaging from either your ad or from your DMs and everything in between has to subtly kind of fit together, guys. It has to be all in harmony. But let's talk about the psychology of the yes or no, okay? You are saying, I'm looking for yes or no, because you are happy with both. So if people say no, like that is a good thing, and you have to prove that, guys. So the only downside to the yes or no is the fact that some prospects will believe you're saying it because you only want a yes. Okay, I think that's a natural thing. And so your questioning just has to prove and reflect the fact you're looking for a yes and a no. Okay, you have to look for the no, but why? Well, you have to look for the no because it's it's a massively trust-building exercise. Okay, so if you're able to be on the prospect side and to look at this decision stood in their shoes, you build so much trust. And that's not even a tactic. That's just standing in their shoes and helping them make a good, solid decision. And if you're able to demonstrate that, they're more likely to buy with you. Okay? As one example, because I've just done this review with a closer, we watched a call where he was speaking to a startup. Okay, and this was in the offer of PR. The guy came in, startup, has a certain amount of budget. They haven't, and this budget was to go towards marketing. So marketing in general encompasses many things, not just PR. And so the looking for the no is saying to the person, okay, if you've got a certain amount of budget for marketing, PR, honestly, and I'm not pushing away here, I'm not saying don't do it, it doesn't have benefits, but there are other aspects of marketing that I feel might be more beneficial to start with and to allocate more budget to, like X, Y, and Z. Okay, so that's looking for the no. That's like saying, I'm not saying leave the call, you're stupid. I'm saying, I'm on your team. There's other things that I believe would be helpful to start with. Have you thought about them? So number one, it's trust building. Secondly, if the prospect can say, they'll think, hey, that's great. The guy's like literally on my team. He's helping make a decision. And then if the prospect says, yeah, you're absolutely right. We've already done this. We've already thought of this, but we want to do this. Right? Now they've sold themselves back to you. Okay. And you standing in good stead because of the trust. So that's looking for the no, but you should also listen out for the yes, guys. And what I mean by this is prospects will nearly always tell you subtly, sometimes, subconsciously, sometimes kind of consciously, like they'll tell you what they want to hear and see, right? And it's up to you to be able to notice that, because it's sometimes lost between lots of other things that they're saying. But a way of doing this is hearing the words they use and what means stuff, what matters to them, and then utilizing those words in a pitch. This is powerful because emotion is part of a sale, right? Massively part of the sale. When people say things, they have emotion attached to it. Okay, that's easy to understand. So selling to those words means something to the person and makes the sale of, a lot easier than utilizing words that they haven't used. Okay. So that's the psychology of it, right? Now let's go into the different versions of the yes or no. So the different delivery and the different ways of saying it, right? And I've put at the top, strict works best in most scenarios, regardless. Okay? And when I say strict, guys, I kind of mean just saying, and then honestly, John, by the end of the call, I'm just looking for a yes or a no. Is that fine with you? That's strict. So it doesn't sound strict, does it? It doesn't sound like I don't give a shit. It doesn't sound like I'm arrogant. It just means after I've said the yes or no, I'm not carrying on with my words. It's concise and it's to the point, and I'm just saying, is that fine? Okay. If you can deliver this very well, this works best in nearly all scenarios, guys, because it's very welcoming. It does not feel salesy. And it still implants in their mind straight away that this person is looking for a decision. That's what we want. But we can soften it, right? Because of next steps. So let's say you have a 2-call scenario, right? In all of your calls nearly. You can still do the strict yes or no. But if they're saying yes or no to a second call, then you can bring that in. So you can say, and by the end of the call, John, I'm just looking for a yes or a no to a second call. Is that fine with you? Okay. So that gives them some understanding that there's going to be a second call, etc. Right? Gives context already. So it's a very good way of doing it. You can soften it with inclusivity and humor because of the type of client. Take my money. Right? I like to use humor a lot. Right? So you can use things like, hey, and by the end of the call, all I'm looking for is like, no, this doesn't work. Or yes, take my fucking money. Right? Again, it's a very good way of saying we're looking for yes or no, bringing in humor and being able to deliver it well. We can also say we're looking for a simple decision. A simple no or a yes. So we change them. Is that fine, John? right? And they say, yeah, understood. And then you say, and please, John, please feel comfortable saying no, right? And it's just kind of it's a double-edged sword. We're looking for a yes or no. We've switched them and then added in, when they've agreed, we're adding in, please do feel comfortable saying no, okay? Which really is the most important, because they're going to be comfortable saying yes, obviously, but it's the no we want to emphasize, which changes the dynamic from he's desperate for a yes to, oh, he's really trying to make me understand no is fine. We can also do the yes or no without doing the yes or no, guys. So essentially, yes or no is saying we're looking for a decision, right? But if you, I know Bowtied Sales Guy does something like this, where if you just tell someone, please feel comfortable saying no, and then you also show them the next steps at the start of the call, as in, at the end of this call, if it aligns, here's what the next steps are going to look like, just so you know ahead of time. That's pretty much the same thing as looking for a yes or a no. Okay, because they've agreed to what the next steps are, and they've also agreed to saying I'm comfortable saying no. We also do that, or I get some of my closers to do that in a scenario where we say, hey, John, before we get into things, I want to kind of, I tell everyone 3 things really to set the tone for these conversations, right? So number 1 is, please feel comfortable saying no on these calls. It's very important to us. Number 2 is, please be yourself and open up and expand on things. I don't normally need to say that, but some people come into these calls hands up, very defensive, 1-word answers, and it's not conducive. And then number 3, if all aligns on this call, I'm looking for a simple yes or no to a second call. Is that fine with you? Okay, so I've utilized the yes or no at the end in a softened way, but I've used kind of 3 points to get ahead of many aspects. So the second point of, be yourself, open up, expand on things, gets ahead of the type A people who are going to sit there and give me 1-word answers. Okay, but I've also used please feel comfortable saying no as the first thing to really implant in their mind. That's fine, right? So there's so many ways of doing this, guys. And I encourage you all to kind of experiment with different ones of these to see how you get on. But how do you, if you want, how do you determine which one to use, right? So the 3 buckets, if you're in the group, you'll know what this is, right? But the 3 buckets is, you can't utilize this on every offer. It doesn't work in every offer, and you have to kind of change it. But on our offer, some people would come to the call highly educated and be ready to close. They'd educated themselves. Whereas the company policy was 2 call close, okay? So we wanted a way to understand, how do we close people on that first call without doing a second call if they've come to the call to close, right? So the 3 buckets is 1. So we'd say kind of at the start of the call, hey, John, so, I want to ask you a question. I want to figure something out here so I can direct the call in the best way. So people come into these calls usually fall into one of 3 buckets. 1, they're usually shopping around and speaking to agencies. Number 2, they're here on this call, but they've got other business partners and decision makers who can't be here. Or number 3, they're here to make a quick decision, right? So the first 2, like shopping around, speaking to agencies, and business partners can't be here, they're 2 scenarios where if they pick 1 or 2 or even both of them, a 1 call close is not going to happen, right? Because there's already things and obstacles in the way. So we don't need to go very strict on a yes or no, because it's not even there. But if they said, yeah, number 3, I'm just here to make a quick decision, that's opening the door for us to go straight in for the decision on that first call. And in that scenario, we would use the strict yes or no. Make sense? Whereas, apologies, if they said, yeah, well, to be honest, speaking to all these different agencies, got a few others planned this week, no point going for a yes or no in a strict way, because it's just not possible. But telling them, I'm just looking for a yes or no to a second call is something we should do, to let them know ahead of time. That's fine. You go and speak to them, but we do 2 call, as in everything we do is 2 calls, right? So we're just looking for yes or no to that, right? Now, one more aspect of this that I didn't include on the first video is the reminder. So a lot of people would say, the feedback was, Rich, I'm getting to the end of calls and they forget I'm looking for yes or no. It's not even in their mind. They still go, I need to go and think about it. And again, guys, this is normal. Okay, a lot of the time you guys are having 45, 55, over an hour long calls. So people are not going to remember what you said right at the start. Okay, I just want to add a caveat that if you say the yes or no in the strict fashion and with meaning, they're more likely to remember it. Okay, that's just how it is. If you say it in a very vague way, like I'm looking for a yes or no to like a second call, and on that second call, we'd go through this and that, and we'll build you this. So is that all good? Right? I hear that kind of thing a lot. Lost all meaning. They don't even realize you're saying I'm looking for a yes or no. And so of course they're not going to remember at the end. Okay. So there are ways to bring it back up and to remind them. And these are incredibly effective. Right? And so one thing I like to do is have people go through the price and say, okay, John, so as you can see, it's either 8,000 a month, or if you want, it's 30K up front, paid in full. So now you know the pricing and how it's delivered, or now you know the pricing, John. Are we looking at a yes or are we looking at a no? Right. So again, that's just bring it in. It will be, they'll in their head, they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember him saying that. And you're just kind of gently pushing that forward, but not in a very salesy way. Okay. And it just gets them in that mindset again of, we're looking for a decision here. Right. You can also bring it back in the way you said it, right? So John, now you know everything. Is it a no, this isn't for you? Or is it yes, take my money now, right? So very simple ways of bringing it back in to remind them. So that's what I would advise for you guys who are having longish calls where the prospect's getting to the end and still saying, naturally, yeah, I need to go and think. Okay, you get ahead of them by saying this.